opening the court 6 men. Combined, they control more money than the GDP of Australia. They fund the labs. They own the models. They write the checks that determine how fast this technology moves. And every single one of them, at some point, has looked into a camera and said some version of the same thing. This might be the most dangerous technology ever created. Then they went back to their offices and funded it anyway. That is not a coincidence. That is not hypocrisy. That is the business model. Today, 6 defendants take the stand. 6 men who are either saving civilization or selling you the fear of losing it while profiting from both sides of that bet. You are the jury. The evidence will be presented. The contradictions will be exposed. And by the end of this, you will decide. Stay until the final ruling, because the last piece of evidence is the one that changes everything. And you won't see it coming. Session 1. Sam Altman, the prophet of doom, who built the bomb. The question before us today is simple. Can you genuinely believe something is dangerous and still be the person most responsible for releasing it into the world? The prosecution, Sam Altman, has testified before the United States Senate that AI could cause, and this is a direct quote, serious risk of harm to the world. He has compared this moment in history to the invention of nuclear weapons. He has said, publicly and repeatedly, that if he is wrong about safety, the consequences could be civilizational. Then he went back to San Francisco and raised $40 billion to go faster, not slower, faster. The prosecution asks, at what point does the warning become the marketing? The defense has a point worth hearing. Altman's argument, and it is not an insane one, is that if powerful AI is coming regardless, it is better to have safety-focused labs at the frontier than to leave that ground to people who care less. His logic, if someone is going to build the bomb, better it be someone who at least loses sleep over it. The defense calls this responsible acceleration. The prosecution calls it the most convenient philosophy money has ever bought. Exhibit A. Sam Altman testifies before the U.S. Senate. Senators ask him if AI should be regulated. He says yes. He volunteers it. He practically begs for it. 6 months later, OpenAI lobbies against key provisions of the EU AI Act, the most significant AI regulation attempt in history. The prosecution says this proves the warnings were theater. The defense says the EU regulations were genuinely flawed, and opposing bad regulation is not the same as opposing all regulation. You decide which version of Sam Altman showed up that day. The ruling, the evidence is split. The man is genuinely complicated. What is not complicated is this. Sam Altman is the single most influential person in the history of artificial intelligence, and he got there by being the first to say it might destroy us. Whether that makes him a prophet or a salesman depends entirely on what happens next. Exhibit D will come later. But first, the court needs to hear from a defendant who didn't just warn about the danger. He sued over it. Session 2. Elon Musk, the man who quit, sued, and then built HIS. The question before us today is whether this defendant's opposition to AI is principled or strategic. The prosecution, in 2015, Elon Musk co-founded OpenAI. The stated mission: ensure artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity. He donated approximately $50 million to get it started. In 2018, he left the board. His stated reason: conflict of interest with Tesla's AI work. In 2023, he signed an open letter calling for a 6-month pause in AI development, a letter signed by thousands of researchers genuinely concerned about the pace of progress. In 2024, he sued OpenAI, claiming it had abandoned its nonprofit mission and was now serving corporate interests over humanity. In 2023, while doing all of the above, he founded X, his own AI company, to build a more powerful AI than OpenAI. The prosecution rests. The defense argues that Musk's position is internally consistent. If you accept one premise, that AI development, controlled by a small group of ideologically aligned people in San Francisco, is more dangerous than AI development with broader competition and oversight. His XAI, the defense argues, is not hypocrisy, it is a move, a check on concentrated power. The defense also notes that Musk has been more publicly critical of AI risk than almost any other person at his level of wealth, That costs something. It makes investors nervous. It is not costless theater. Exhibit B, February 2023. Musk tweets that AI is one of the biggest risks to the future of civilization. The tweet gets 3 million likes. 3 months later, XAI is incorporated in Nevada. The prosecution says the timeline tells you everything you need to know. The defense says 3 months is not enough time to build a company, meaning XAI was already in planning before the tweet, meaning the concern and the company were developing simultaneously, meaning the fear was real and the response was, build something better. Prosecution or defense, where do you stand right now? Drop your verdict in the comments. I read every single one. The ruling Elon Musk is the only defendant on this list who sued a company for being too dangerous and then built a competitor to it. That is either the most principled move in Silicon Valley history or the most elaborate competitive strategy ever disguised as ethics. The court cannot decide which, and neither will you. Not yet. Session 3. Reid Hoffman, The Invisible Hand. The question before us today is about power that operates without a face. The prosecution Reid Hoffman does not have a documentary. He does not testify before Congress. He does not post unhinged things at 2 in the morning. And yet, he was an early backer of OpenAI. He sits on the board of Microsoft, which invested $13 billion into OpenAI. He has publicly called AI the most transformative technology in human history. He wrote a book, co-written with GPT-4, about how AI will change everything. He also funds political campaigns on both sides of the aisle in elections that will determine how AI gets regulated. The prosecution's charge is not that Reid Hoffman is dangerous. The charge is that he is everywhere and nobody is watching. The defense Hoffman has been more transparent about his AI investments than almost anyone at his level. He disclosed his OpenAI connection before it was required. He publicly debates AI ethics. He has funded AI safety research alongside AI development. The defense argues that calling Reid Hoffman dangerous for being influential is like calling a chess grandmaster dangerous for thinking 12 moves ahead. The moves are visible. The board is public. Pay attention. Exhibit C. Hoffman gives an interview where he says AI governance is the most important policy question of our generation. That same year, he donates to campaigns of senators on the committee that oversees AI regulation. The prosecution says this is buying the referee. The defense says this is how democracy works and that Hoffman's donations are public record, which is more transparency than most people at his level offer. The ruling Reid Hoffman is the defendant who makes the jury most uncomfortable, not because he is obviously guilty, but because nothing he has done is obviously wrong. He plays within the rules. He discloses what he must. He influences what he can. The question is not whether what he does is legal. It clearly is. The question is whether legal and right are still the same thing when the stakes are this high. Session 4. Peter Thiel, the libertarian who loves surveillance. The question before us today is ideological. The prosecution Peter Thiel believes in individual freedom. He has funded movements against government overreach. He has written about the dangers of centralized power. He describes himself as a libertarian. He also co-founded Palantir, a company that sells AI-powered surveillance technology to governments, the U.S. military, immigration enforcement agencies, police departments in 17 countries. Palantir's software has been used to track undocumented immigrants, to monitor populations, to give governments capabilities that if you take Thiel's libertarian philosophy seriously, governments should never have. The prosecution calls this the most complete ideological contradiction on this list. The defense Thiel's response, and he has given it, is that Palantir works with democratic governments, not authoritarian ones. That the alternative to American surveillance technology is Chinese surveillance technology. That someone will build these tools regardless, and it is better they are built by people who at least have to answer to Congress. Sound familiar? It is the same argument as Sam Altman's. The defense rests. Exhibit D. This is the piece of evidence the defense has been saving. Palantir goes public. In the IPO filing, the company includes an unusual disclaimer, almost unprecedented in corporate history. It warns investors that Palantir's work could be used in ways that are contrary to our beliefs. A company that warns you, in its own legal documents, that its product might violate its founder's values. The prosecution says this proves Theo knows exactly what he built. The defense says only a company with genuine values would include that warning at all. The ruling Peter. Theo built the surveillance infrastructure of the modern state while funding the politicians who promised to dismantle the modern state. That tension is not accidental. It is the product, and it is worth $40 billion. Session 5. Marc Andreessen, the optimist, as financial instrument. The question before us today is whether optimism can be a conflict of interest. The prosecution, in 2023, Marc Andreessen published a document called the Techno-Optimist Manifesto. It is 5,000 words arguing that technology, including AI, will solve every major problem facing humanity. That deceleration is the real danger. That the people warning about AI risk are, in his words, enemies of the future. His venture capital firm, Andreessen Horowitz, known as A16Z, has invested in more AI companies than almost any other fund on Earth. The prosecution's question is direct. When your financial returns depend on people believing AI is safe and inevitable, is your optimism a worldview or a prospectus? The defense Andreessen's investment track record includes companies that genuinely changed the world for the better. He backed a browser. He backed social networking before it was obvious. He backed cloud computing before enterprises believed in it. His argument is not that AI has no risks. His argument is that the cure slowing down, regulating aggressively, ceding ground to less safety-conscious developers in other countries is worse than the disease. The defense argues this is a coherent position held by serious people. It is not a conspiracy. It is a bet. Exhibit E, the Techno-Optimist Manifesto, names specific enemies of progress. It includes AI safety researchers, academics, policy advocates, people who have spent their careers trying to make the technology safer. Andreessen called them enemies, not critics, not skeptics, enemies. The prosecution says this language reveals the real stakes, that for Andreessen, the safety debate is not intellectual, it is financial, and the people slowing down his returns are enemies. The defense says the language was deliberately provocative and should be read as rhetoric, not threat. The ruling Marc Andreessen has made more money from AI optimism than almost anyone alive. Whether that optimism caused the investments, or the investments caused the optimism, is a question only he can answer honestly. The court suspects he does not spend much time asking it. That case seemed closed. Then the last defendant walked in. Session 6. Masayoshi Son, the man who lost everything and bet it all again. The question before us today is about memory. Specifically, whether this defendant has any. The prosecution, Masayoshi Son, lost more money in a single decade than almost any investor in human history. The dot-com crash erased $70 billion of his personal wealth. $70 billion. In today's money, that is enough to run NASA for 15 years. He recovered, he rebuilt, he learned, presumably, something. Then in 2024 and 2025, he announced plans to invest $100 billion in AI infrastructure in the United States alone. He said AI would be 10,000 times smarter than humans within 10 years. He compared this moment to the Big Bang. The prosecution's charge is not that Son is wrong. The charge is that we have seen this exact movie before, and we know how it ends. The defense presents a single data point. In 2000, at the peak of the dot-com bubble, Son invested $20 million in a small Chinese e-commerce company that most Western investors ignored. That company was Alibaba. The investment became worth $60 billion. Son is not reckless. Son is early. And being early looks identical to being wrong right up until it doesn't. Exhibit F, January 2025. Son stands next to Donald Trump in the White House and announces a $500 billion investment in American AI infrastructure, a project called Stargate. The announcement is made before the funding is secured, before the partners are confirmed, before anyone has explained where $500 billion is coming from. The prosecution says this is Son doing what Son always does, announcing the future before it exists, using the announcement itself as a financing tool. The defense says this is exactly how you build things that have never existed before. You declare them real. then you make them real. The ruling Masayoshi Son has been wrong at a scale that would have ended any other investor's career. He has also been right at a scale that justifies ignoring every warning about him. He is either the last true believer in a room full of cynics, or the most expensive optimist in the history of capital. By now, you should have a verdict forming, because it is time for closing arguments. Closing arguments, the prosecution's closing. 6 men, 6 fortunes, 6 different ways of saying I know this is dangerous and writing the check anyway. The fear is real. The danger is real. And the profit from both is realer than either. The defense is closing. 6 men who looked at the most powerful technology ever created and decided that running away was not an option, that someone would build it, that it might as well be someone who at least understood what they were building. Jury instructions: before you deliver your verdict, consider 3 things. 1. Every technology that changed the world was built by someone who benefited from building it, that has never once stopped the technology from changing the world. 2. The alternative to these 6 men is not a world without AI. It is a world where AI is built by people not sitting in this courtroom today. 3. Fear and profit are not mutually exclusive. The question is, which one is driving? The ruling, in my humble opinion, this whole situation looks a lot like the tire shop owner who throws nails on the road. In other words, create the problem, then sell the solution. It's the same as generating your own demand just to keep the machine running. Watch out for the rain. Buy your umbrella, here to stay dry. They are the owners of the chaos itself, and they profit from every single drop of it. Does that sound familiar to you? Because it should. These men did not just build the technology. They built the fear around it. They wrote the warnings. They funded the research that told you how dangerous it was. And then they turned around and said, don't worry, we're the only ones who can fix it. Trust us. Subscribe to us. Invest in us. That is not innovation. That is not vision. That is the oldest business model in the world, dressed up in a hoodie and a TED Talk. So what do you think? Leave your opinion in the comments, because this conversation is bigger than any one verdict. Next case. The billionaires behind every streaming platform you pay for every month, charged with building the golden age of television by destroying the economics of making it. Netflix, Spotify, the men who gave you everything you wanted to watch and made sure the people who made it couldn't afford to live in the cities where they filmed it. The trial starts this week. Subscribe so you don't miss the opening statement. Court is adjourned. See you in the next one.